Hey guys, welcome back for another week of meals. All of these meals are easy to make and they are great homemade options for your busy weeknights. Let's go ahead and get started, and hopefully you find something that you would like to make this week. The first recipe, we are making these homemade Crunchwraps Supremes with some Mexican rice. In my skillet, I am starting 1 pound of ground beef, and I'm also adding in half of a chopped onion. I'm just going to let these two cook together. Once my meat was done cooking, I did go ahead and drain off the extra grease, and then I'm just going to use some taco seasoning to season this up. You can use 1 packet of taco seasoning, or I have the big container, so I usually use 3 to 4 tablespoons worth. Next, I'm just chopping up a Roma tomato, and I'm also going to cut up a little bit of lettuce. I'm just using iceberg lettuce and cutting it into nice thin pieces. Next, I have 1 can of this Ricos nacho cheese. This is my favorite nacho cheese to use. You can warm this up on the stovetop or just stick it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. To begin building our Crunchwraps, you're going to need burrito-sized tortillas. That's what I have laying right here. Then I'm adding in 1 spoonful of our taco meat. On top of the taco meat, you'll add a couple spoonfuls of your nacho cheese. After the nacho cheese, you're going to add 1 tostada and then cover that with sour cream. I'm going to add the lettuce and the tomato and then sprinkle the top with some shredded cheese. I'm just using a Mexican blend. The shredded cheese on top will help hold everything together. And then you're going to need 1 tortilla that you use to rip pieces off of. The burrito sized tortillas are just a little bit too small, so by adding that piece in the center, it makes sure everything is closed up inside. Now I'm just going to fold the edges all the way around, and we're going to transfer this over to a nice hot skillet. My skillet was at a medium heat, and I just let this sit for about 2 to 3 minutes until it browned up on each side. Here is my finished plate of food. I just cut my Crunchwrap in half to make it a little easier to eat. And on the side, I made some Mexican rice, and I have a little bit of extra sour cream there. In my opinion, you can't have too much sour cream. And then this is what we had for dinner on this night. Up next, we're making these Parmesan chicken tenders, and these are a low carb recipe, so if you're low carb or keto, this will be a good recipe for you. You will need to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. I'm starting by cutting up 3 chicken breasts into smaller strips. You can use chicken tenders for this, but I didn't have any, so I just used some chicken breast. Into this bowl, we're going to make our breading, so I'm adding 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, a half teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of paprika, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, and about a half teaspoon of black pepper. Once all the seasonings are in the bowl, make sure you get it mixed together really well and break up any clumps of Parmesan cheese. Now that that's ready, we're going to go ahead and start dipping our chicken into the breading, getting it covered, and then adding it onto our pan. If I'm able to find this pan, I will try to link it below in the description box for you. I just picked it up at Walmart one day, and I like it because it has this rack on top, so all the drippings drip down through. and it allows them to get crispy on all sides and not soak up the extra juices. If you want to have a thicker breading on your chicken, then you can also dip these in egg. You would dip it in the breading, into the egg, and then into the breading again before putting it on your pan. Personally, I just like a thinner breading, so that's what I'm doing today, is just dipping it in the breading, no egg or anything. Once my chicken was all breaded, I put them in the oven for about 20 minutes. You just want to make sure that they reach at least 165 degrees. Here's what my finished plate looked like. I was just dipping these in some ranch dressing. It pairs very nicely. I served these with some potato wedges that I made. I'm actually going to be sharing that recipe on Wednesday, so make sure you keep an eye out for that one. But these are really easy and a great homemade option. Up next, we're making a great comfort meal. These creamy garlic pork chops and mashed potatoes really hit the spot. The first thing I'm doing is adding about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of butter and about another tablespoon of olive oil into my pan. We're just going to let that heat up while we season up our pork chops. Onto my cutting board, I have 6 pork chops. I'm just going to season these on both sides with some salt and pepper. Once those are all seasoned, I'm transferring them over into our hot skillet. These pork chops were pretty big. I was using thick cut pork chops, so I only did 3 at a time. I just cooked them in 2 separate batches, and then once they were done, I removed them to a separate plate for right now. Another note, you are not trying to cook these pork chops all the way through. I just let them sear on both sides for about 2 to 3 minutes. Once we're through searing our pork chops, I'm going to melt another tablespoon of butter into our pan. In my hand, I have 4 garlic cloves that have been peeled and sliced in half. We're going to let these brown up in this butter and oil until they have this beautiful color to them. Next, I'm adding in a tablespoon and a half of flour. I'm going to mix that up in the butter. We are just making a roux. I'm just going to let this cook for just a minute, let it bubble, and let it brown up a bit. Next, I'm adding a half cup of low sodium chicken broth. I'm just going to mix this together until I notice it thickening up. Now I'm just adding a couple drops of lemon juice. You don't want to go overboard, but this really does help the flavor. I just did a few drops. Next, I'm adding in 1 cup of heavy cream. I'm going to get this mixed together. It'll take a minute for it all to come together, but just keep mixing and eventually it'll get there. Now, I'm just going to add a little bit of seasoning. I'm adding about a half teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and a 1/4 to a half teaspoon of salt. You can salt and pepper to your own taste. Once your sauce is mixed up and you have your seasonings all mixed in, let this come to a simmer. After a few minutes, you can add your pork chops back in and let those finish cooking through. This should not take long. You just basically want to let them warm back up since they've been sitting aside for a little bit, and you just want to make sure they hit at least 145 degrees. Here's what my finished plate looked like. I just served these pork chops with some mashed potatoes, and you can add that cream sauce over everything. It's so delicious all together. As you can see, those garlic pieces are still in here. There's one on top of the pork chop. If you don't like those, you can take them out. I think they're delicious, so I eat them. My husband doesn't like them, so it's a win-win for both of us, but it's totally optional if you eat them or not. Thank you so much for watching today's video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I hope to see you back here on Wednesday, and I'll be sharing the recipe for those potato wedges.